There are moments in life when your goodness is met not with gratitude, but with betrayal. When your honesty is mocked, your kindness mistaken for weakness, and your open heart becomes the easiest target for someone else's hidden bitterness. Doesn't make sense, not at first. You gave them sincerity. You offered loyalty. You tried, not because you were naive, but because you believed in love, in decency, in the quiet strength of compassion. And when that is thrown back at you with coldness, when the very best of who you are is used against you, something inside begins to question, was I too kind? Too trusting? Did I deserve this? No, you didn't. But understand this, when someone wounds a pure heart, it does not go unnoticed by life. There is a justice deeper than revenge, quieter than anger, and far more lasting. And that justice is already working. The cruelty they showed you will not vanish. It will follow them, not because you wished them harm, but because the truth has a way of echoing back through time. And the echo grows louder the more they try to silence it. This is not a speech about vengeance. It's about truth. It's about the sacred strength of those who remain kind despite what they've suffered. And it's about how, in the end, cruelty always circles back, not to the victim, but to the one who inflicted it. Moral innocence is not weakness, it's strength refined through restraint. In a world where dominance often masquerades as power and cruelty is disguised as courage, the truly rare individual is the one who chooses kindness, not because they are incapable of fighting back, but because they understand the cost of becoming like those who hurt them. Moral innocence, real, hard-won innocence, is not a trait born from ignorance. It is the decision to see darkness and still choose the light again and again, even when the light exposes you to pain. To possess a pure heart in this world is not to be blind. It is to see clearly and still choose to believe in goodness. And that choice, made daily, often silently, is one of the most courageous acts a person can commit. It takes immense internal discipline to remain open-hearted after betrayal. It takes strength to extend compassion when life has taught you caution. And it takes integrity to continue acting with love when you've been shown every reason not to. People who live this way are often misunderstood. Others mistake their gentleness for submission. They confuse mercy with weakness. But those assumptions only come from those who have never dared to live with that level of emotional courage. Because it is far easier to shut down than to remain open. It is far easier to grow cold than to stay warm in a world that punishes warmth. And it is far easier to mirror cruelty than it is to stand firm in grace. So when someone is cruel to a pure-hearted soul, they may think they are taking advantage of someone soft. What they fail to see is that they are standing in the presence of someone who has endured far more than they will ever understand. Someone who has been through fire and chosen not to burn others in return. The one with the pure heart is not the fool. They are the refined, they are the rare, and while cruelty may try to break them, it never succeeds. Because purity that has been tested by pain becomes something unshakable. Those who harm such souls often believe they've won. They mistake silence for defeat. But in truth, they've already lost something precious, something their spirit may not realize until far later. They've witnessed grace and chosen to wound it, and that choice creates a debt, not to the one they hurt, but to their own conscience. A debt that life eventually will call in. Cruelty toward goodness carries an unseen cost. When someone chooses to hurt a good person, they often believe there will be no consequence, that kindness is easily erased, that sincerity is disposable, because in that moment, power clouds their vision. They believe the upper hand they hold through manipulation, betrayal, or indifference grants them some kind of moral immunity. But what they cannot see or refuse to understand is that cruelty against a pure heart always comes with a cost. It may not arrive in the form of public consequences, but the weight of that act embeds itself into the very structure of their life, slowly, silently, but inevitably. You see, human beings are not built to harm others without internal damage. Even when the world offers no immediate justice, there is a psychological and spiritual reality at play that cannot be escaped. When someone mistreats a good person, they damage their own moral compass. They bend something within themselves that was once upright. And the more they repeat it, the more twisted that inner structure becomes. At first, they may feel nothing. Justification numbs their senses. Denial shields them. They rewrite the story in their own minds, paint themselves as victims, convince themselves the other person was too sensitive, or worse, that their actions were somehow deserved. But time has a way of unraveling the lies we tell ourselves, and the truth, once ignored, becomes a quiet echo that grows louder with each passing year. The person who hurt you may appear fine on the surface. They may carry on with life seemingly unaffected. But beneath the surface, the fracture begins. It shows up in moments they can't control, in restlessness they can't explain, in relationships that never quite feel secure, in a vague sense of dissatisfaction that no success can silence. That is the cost. That is the unseen consequence. Because when you wronged someone who showed you nothing but honesty, you plant a seed, not in their life, but in yours. And while they may struggle and suffer, in the immediate aftermath, they also grow, they reflect, they heal, they rise. But the one who inflicted harm, if they do not confront what they've done, begins to sink under the weight of their own unresolved actions. This is why cruelty toward goodness is so dangerous, not just for the one who suffers, but for the one who causes the suffering. They trade their peace for a temporary illusion of control. They exchange integrity for a fleeting sense of superiority, but control fades and illusions shatter. And when they do, what remains is the memory of what they did and the realization of who they became to do it. There is a natural order to the human spirit that seeks balance. You cannot continue to betray that order without consequence. You cannot harm what is good without inviting that harm inward. It might take years, it might be subtle, but it comes. The cost is real, not because someone wished them harm, but because truth is not neutral. It corrects what is broken, and it does so with precision. So if you have ever been on the receiving end of cruelty, especially when all you offered was sincerity, know this: the scales are not unbalanced forever. What was done in shadow will be seen. What was hidden will rise, not through your vengeance, but through the very laws written into the soul of every human being. And those laws always collect what is owed. The human psyche cannot escape the weight of guilt. There's a reason why guilt exists. It's not just an emotional inconvenience or a leftover from ancient ideas of morality. Guilt is the soul's alarm system. It's the internal signal that something has violated a sacred order, not an external law necessarily, but an internal truth. And when someone harms a person who showed them nothing but love, loyalty, or trust, that violation doesn't just vanish with time. It may be buried, silenced, or suppressed, but it doesn't go away. It becomes part of them, whether they recognize it or not. At first, guilt can be hidden beneath layers of self-righteousness. The mind can build elaborate justifications, narratives in which the harm done was necessary or even deserved. The human brain is skilled at rewriting reality to avoid discomfort. It can turn the victim into the villain and the perpetrator into the misunderstood. But the body keeps score. The subconscious keeps the receipts. And over time, the dissonance between who they think they are and what they've done begins to create internal tension that cannot be ignored forever. Guilt may not show up loudly. It often starts in the quiet places: sleepless nights, unexplained anxiety, a persistent sense of unease when things are finally calm. It appears in avoidance, avoiding certain memories, avoiding certain people, avoiding any situation that might mirror what they did. It appears in how they overcompensate, trying to prove they're good, trying to outrun what they've buried by distracting themselves with noise, pleasure, or status. But no matter how far they run, the inner voice remains. The shadow lingers, not as punishment, but as a call to make things right. You cannot inflict pain on a soul who offered you purity without consequences echoing through your own spirit. Even if the world cheers you on, even if no one ever finds out what you did, your psyche knows, your conscience knows. And the longer you ignore it, the more distorted your inner world becomes. Relationships suffer, joy becomes fleeting, trust becomes difficult. Because deep down, you know you've broken it in someone else, and part of you wonders if others will do the same to you. This is not about superstition. This is about the psychological architecture of being human. You can't violate love without damaging your ability to receive it. You can't harm someone who was pure with you and walk away whole. There is always a cost. And guilt is the beginning of that payment. But here's what makes it haunting. The person they hurt doesn't have to say a word. You don't have to seek revenge. You don't even have to be in their life anymore. The guilt follows them, not because you want it to, but because that's how the soul works. That's how truth operates. When someone is cruel to someone who did nothing but love them, the echo of that cruelty doesn't stay in the past. It becomes part of their present, their future, their identity. And eventually, they have to face it, maybe through regret, maybe through a failed relationship that mirrors their own betrayal, maybe through a moment of clarity when they see you thriving, healed, unshaken, and they realize the weight they carry isn't just about losing you. It's about losing themselves in the process of hurting you. So never think your silence means they've escaped. They haven't. The mind may forget, but the soul remembers. And what the soul remembers, it eventually demands to be reconciled. Your pain becomes the mirror they avoid. There's a strange and powerful thing that happens after someone wrongs a good person. They begin to avoid the very memory of that person, not because they're over it, but because they're not. It isn't indifference that drives them to silence, it's discomfort. It's the weight of seeing someone they hurt still standing, still breathing, still shining despite everything. Your presence, even in their absence, becomes a mirror, and it reflects not what they see in you, but what they tried to destroy and couldn't. They may block you, ignore you, or erase you from the spaces they once shared with you, but this is not closure, it's escape, because seeing you reminds them of a truth they would rather not face, that their cruelty didn't erase your light, it exposed their darkness. And the longer you rise in strength, in healing, in peace, the more undeniable that truth becomes. Pain, especially the kind that's unjust, has a way of transforming into presence. You become part of their inner dialogue, whether they acknowledge it or not. When someone hurts a pure soul, they leave a fracture in their own conscience. And every time life confronts them with a moment of honesty, when they're shown kindness or loyalty or patience, they're reminded of how they once rejected those very qualities in you. You become the example they try to dismiss but can't forget. They may criticize your growth or downplay your worth, not because it's real, but because they need it to be. If they admitted your goodness, your value, your sincerity, they'd have to face the magnitude of what they threw away. And for many, that realization is unbearable. So they avoid the mirror. But life has a way of reflecting us back to those who hurt us. Maybe not directly, maybe not in the way you expect, but your energy, your story, your healing, it echoes. It shows up in their relationships, in their moments of solitude, in the questions that wake them in the middle of the night. Why did I do that? Why did I walk away from someone who meant no harm? These thoughts may be fleeting, but they come. And when they do, they cut deeper than any revenge ever could. The irony is, the more you grow, the more you forgive, the more your life becomes whole again, the more your existence becomes proof of their failure, not because you intend it that way, but because you've become the evidence of everything they mishandled. They didn't just lose you, they lost the version of themselves who could have honored you. And now your light no longer flatters their darkness, it exposes it. So stand tall in your healing, because without speaking a word, you become the loudest truth they'll ever have to face. Healing is the final victory over cruelty. There's a common misconception that healing is passive, that it means letting go and simply moving on. But real healing, the kind that reshapes your identity, rebuilds your inner world, and restores your sense of worth, is not a retreat. It is a triumph, a profound, disciplined, courageous form of resistance. Because to choose healing after someone has shattered your trust is to declare, you may have wounded me, but you do not get to define me. Cruelty aims to leave a mark. It wants to etch itself into your story and claim a permanent role in who you become. When someone betrays, deceives, or mistreats you, they don't just harm you in the moment. They attempt to steal the future from you. They want the damage to linger, to shape your view of yourself and the world. But healing interrupts that cycle. It reclaims the narrative. It says, you are a chapter, not the whole book. And that is a terrifying reality for those who caused the pain. Because while they may have counted on your silence, your withdrawal, your collapse, what they didn't expect was your rise. They didn't expect that you would take what they broke and build something stronger, that your empathy would deepen, your voice would grow clearer, and your purpose would become sharper. They didn't expect that the very heart they tried to damage would become the reason you outgrow them entirely. Healing is not about pretending it didn't hurt. It's about honoring that it did and choosing to grow anyway. It's the process of staring into the truth of what was done to you, not to relive it, but to transcend it, to strip it of its power over your present. And in that process, something beautiful happens. You evolve, not into a colder version of yourself, but into a wiser one. One who can hold boundaries without bitterness, one who can love again but with discernment, one who no longer apologizes for their softness because they know now it was never a flaw. And as you rise, as you continue to heal, those who were cruel to you are forced to witness something deeply unsettling. Their actions failed. The pain they caused did not destroy you. In fact, it refined you. Your resilience becomes a kind of quiet justice, not because you sought revenge, but because you dared to become more, not less. This is why healing is the final victory over cruelty, because it doesn't just protect your peace, it reveals their loss. They lost the chance to stand beside someone who would have loved them purely. They lost the opportunity to be part of a life rooted in truth. And now, while you move forward with clarity and grace, they remain tethered to what they did. The beauty is, you no longer need to carry their weight. You don't need to prove anything to them. Your healing speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. It tells the world, what was done to me didn't win. And when that message echoes long enough, it reaches even the ones who tried to silence your spirit. And that's when they realize the pure heart they tried to break is the very soul they'll never be able to forget.